There is a kind of goodness you simply cannot force. You have felt this. You decide, this year, you are finally going to be more patient, more loving, slower to anger, and for about 3 days, it works. Then someone crosses you, and the old you is right there, waiting, exactly where it always was. We treat character like a set of muscles. Grit your teeth, try harder. White-knuckle your way into being a better person, and somehow it never quite holds. Because there is a difference between real fruit and plastic fruit. From across the room, they look identical, but one was grown and one was manufactured, and only one of them is alive. Almost 2,000 years ago, a man sitting in prison for his faith wrote a short, urgent letter to a group of churches losing their way. And in the middle of that letter, he drew a single picture that has never been improved upon. Not a list of rules, not a self-improvement plan, a tree. His name was Paul, and he called what grows on that tree the fruit of the Spirit. Here is what I want to show you in the next 20 minutes. The 9 things Paul names are not 9 tasks for you to complete. They are one life, grown in you from the inside out. Let me show you what he actually wrote. To understand the fruit, you first have to see what Paul set it against. Because he does not begin with the fruit, he begins with a warning. Just before our famous verse, Paul writes down a second list. And it is ugly. He calls them the works of the flesh, sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and then he adds, almost wearily, and things like these. Now notice one small word Paul chose very carefully. He calls these things works. A work is something you produce, something you manufacture by effort, out of your own resources. The flesh, which is Paul's word for human nature curved in on itself, is a factory. And this ugly list is what it turns out, hour after hour, all on its own. And notice how many of them are just ordinary. We expect the shocking sins, but most of the list is relational. Jealousy, rivalry, anger, division. This is the quiet stuff that dismantles families and churches and friendships. The flesh is very good at it. And then, in the very next breath, Paul turns. But the fruit of the Spirit, he says. And with those few words, everything changes. Look closely at what he does not say. He does not say the works of the Spirit. He says the fruit of the Spirit. And that single word choice carries the whole idea. Works are manufactured. Fruit is grown. A factory can stamp out 1,000 units by tonight. An apple tree cannot. Fruit comes slowly, quietly, in its own season, and only ever from something that is alive. You have never once seen a tree straining to produce apples, grunting, sweating, trying harder. The fruit is simply what comes out of a healthy tree that stays connected to a living root. And there is a second thing hidden in that word, easy to miss in English. The fruit is singular. One fruit, not 9 fruits. Paul is not handing you 9 separate items to collect like badges. Love this week, patience next month, self-control by summer. He is describing one cluster, one character with 9 facets, and they grow together, or not at all. You cannot be truly loving without being patient. You cannot be truly good without being kind. Pull on any one of them, and all 9 come along. It is all one ripening life. Which raises the only question that really matters. If you cannot manufacture it, where on earth does it come from? Jesus had already answered that question years before Paul wrote a single word. On his last night, he gathered his closest friends and handed them one image to hold on to forever. I am the vine, he said. You are the branches. A branch does not produce grapes by effort. It produces grapes by connection. Its only job is to stay joined to the vine and let the life of the vine flow up through it. "Abide in me," Jesus said, "and I in you." As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. And then the line that quietly undoes every self-improvement plan ever written: apart from me, you can do nothing. Not a little. Nothing. So the fruit of the Spirit is not a checklist. It is what grows naturally when a life stays connected to God. Your job is not to squeeze the fruit out by force. Your job is to abide, to stay near, to keep the branch in the vine. The Spirit grows all the rest. So let's walk out along that branch and look at the 9 grapes hanging from it, one at a time. The first is love. And in Greek, the word Paul reaches for is loaded. The ancient world had several words for love. One for friendship, one for family affection, one for romance and desire. Paul reaches past all of them for a word the culture barely used: agape. Agape is not a warm feeling that happens to you. It is a decision you make for the good of another person, whether or not you feel like it. It is a verb long before it is ever an emotion. It is the love that keeps showing up. The love that serves someone who can never pay you back. It is love aimed at the difficult, the ungrateful, even the enemy. This is the very word the Bible uses to describe God Himself. For God so loved the world. That is agape. And Paul lists it first for a reason. Everything after it is really just love wearing different clothes. Joy is love celebrating. Peace is love resting. Patience is love waiting. Kindness is love with its work boots on. Love is the trunk of the tree. The other 8 are branches growing out of it. Get the trunk right, and the rest has somewhere to grow from. The second fruit is joy. In Greek, chara. And here we have to clear away a misunderstanding right at the start. Joy is not the same thing as happiness. Happiness depends on happenings. Good news, good weather, good circumstances. It arrives and leaves with your day. Joy is deeper and stranger than that. Joy can sit in the same room as sorrow. Paul wrote the word joy from a prison cell. The early Christians sang it under threat of death, because this joy is not built on circumstances. It is built on something circumstances cannot reach, that you are loved by God and held and going somewhere good. It is the quiet gladness of a person who already knows how the story ends. Not a forced smile. A deep, grounded well that still has water in it long after everything above ground has gone dry. That is why it can survive what happiness never could. The third fruit is peace. The Greek word is eirene, but behind it stands a far older Hebrew word, shalom. And shalom means so much more than the absence of conflict. To us, peace usually means nothing is going wrong, no noise, no fighting, an empty, quiet room. But shalom means everything is as it should be, wholeness. Completeness. Every broken thing mended and set right. It is not merely the silence after the war. It is the flourishing of the garden, and this peace runs in 2 directions at once. First, peace with God. The war is over. You can stop running. You have finally come home. And out of that grows the peace of God, a steadiness on the inside that holds even when life on the outside does not. It is the calm of deep, still water. Not because a storm has never come, but because the water is deep. Waves can trouble the surface, and the depths stay perfectly still. The fourth fruit is patience, and the Greek word here is wonderfully literal, macrothumia. It breaks into 2 pieces, macros meaning long, and thumos meaning temper or heat. Long-tempered. The exact opposite of short-tempered. The older Bibles translated it long-suffering, and that catches something we have almost lost. This is not patience with a slow line at the store. This is patience with people. It is the long fuse, the slow burn, the refusal to give up on someone who keeps letting you down. It is exactly how the Bible describes God's own patience with us: slow to anger, waiting, making room for us to change. Think of a seed buried in the ground. Nothing seems to be happening. For weeks, there is only bare soil. Patience is the willingness to keep watering the soil, trusting that something is growing down where you cannot yet see it, in other people, and, just as often, in yourself. Being long-tempered with your own slow progress is its own kind of patience. The fifth fruit is kindness. In Greek, Christos. If patience is love that waits, kindness is love that moves. Kindness is goodness in action, turned toward another person and made useful. It notices. It sees the tired cashier, the lonely neighbor, the friend who has gone quiet lately, and then it does something small and concrete about what it sees. The Greek word carries the sense of being useful, gentle, easy to be around, not harsh, not sharp-edged. There was an old play on words in the early church. The Greek for kind, Christos, sounded almost exactly like the name Christos, Christ. And that was rather the point. To be kind was to look a little like him. Kindness is love with its sleeves rolled up, holding out a piece of bread. It is the smallest of the fruits to look at, and often the one people remember longest. The sixth fruit is goodness. The Greek is agathosune, and you might wonder how goodness is any different from kindness. They feel like cousins. Here is the difference. Kindness is soft. Goodness has a spine. Goodness is not merely being nice. It is being morally good, all the way through, even when absolutely no one is watching. It is integrity. Being the same person in the dark that you are in the light. And sometimes goodness is not gentle at all. Sometimes love has to do the hard, good thing. It tells the truth that needs telling. It overturns the table that needs overturning. Jesus was endlessly kind. He was also good enough to drive the money changers out of the temple. Goodness is kindness with a backbone, ripe and solid all the way to the core. It is the fruit that can be trusted because there is nothing rotten hidden inside it. The seventh fruit is faithfulness. The Greek word is pistis, the very same word usually translated faith, but here it does not mean believing the right things. It means being reliable, trustworthy, someone whose word can actually be leaned on. Faithfulness is the fruit that only shows up over time. It is the person who is still there, who does what they said they would do, long after the feeling has faded. In a world full of people who quit, on jobs, on promises, on marriages, on friendships, faithfulness is quietly radical. It is not flashy. Nobody applauds the friend who simply keeps showing up for 30 years. But it is a reflection of the deepest thing about God himself. He is faithful. He keeps his promises. Picture a single lamp left burning in a window, night after night, for someone who has not yet come home. That steady, unglamorous, faithful light, never once impressive and never once going out. That is the fruit. The eighth fruit is gentleness. And this one is the most misunderstood of them all. The Greek word is praus, and in the older Bibles it was translated meekness. And we hear meek, and immediately we think weak, a doormat, a pushover, someone with no strength at all. That is the exact opposite of what the word actually means. In ancient Greek, prautes was the word used for a war horse that had been fully trained, a powerful animal, all muscle and fire, that had learned to answer to the lightest touch of the reins. Every ounce of the strength was still there. but now it was under control, aimed, useful. That is gentleness. Not weakness at all. It is strength under control. It is the strong person who chooses to be tender. The one who could crush you and instead cradles you, the way a large hand can hold a small bird without ever harming it. Jesus said of himself, "I am gentle and lowly in heart." The most powerful person who ever lived, holding all of that power on a soft rein. And the ninth fruit, last on the list, is self-control. In Greek, enkrateia, the word literally means to have power over oneself, to hold the reins of your own life. It is the ability to say no to yourself, to your appetites, your impulses, your temper, the sharp word you want to fire back. In a world engineered to sell you the opposite, more, now, whatever you feel, self-control is almost a lost art. But notice where Paul places it. Dead last. Not because it is the least, but because of what its position quietly reveals. We usually put self-control first. We think, if I can just master myself, everything else will follow. I will grit my teeth and become loving and joyful and patient. Paul flips it around. Self-control is not the root of the fruit. It is one of the grapes. It grows and lasts as the Spirit slowly hands you back the reins of a life you could never fully steer on your own. It is a steady flame that no longer gutters and flares with every passing gust of wind. Not a life with the fire put out, but a life with the fire finally under your hand. So there they all are, 9 grapes on one branch. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. And now step back and look at the whole cluster at once. Because when you do, you may notice something. You have seen this face before. Read the 9 again, slowly, and you realize you are not reading a list of virtues at all. You are reading a portrait. This is the description of a person, perfectly loving, full of joy, at peace, endlessly patient, kind, good, faithful, gentle, in complete command of himself. This is Jesus. The fruit of the Spirit is nothing less than the character of Christ, slowly grown inside an ordinary human life. 9 words that, put together, spell his name. That is what the Spirit is actually doing in you, not making you a shinier version of yourself, making you look like him. And now Paul adds one final line, almost as an afterthought, and it is quietly stunning. Against such things, he writes, there is no law. Sit with that for a moment. There has never been a law passed against love. No government ever outlawed joy. No court has ever prosecuted anyone for too much patience or too much kindness. The law exists to restrain the works of the flesh, but the fruit of the Spirit needs no restraining whatsoever. It is the one thing in all the world of which there can never, ever be too much. So what does all of this actually mean for you tomorrow morning? It means you can finally stop straining. You were never meant to manufacture love by sheer willpower. You were never going to white-knuckle your way into joy. The whole picture of the tree is an invitation to stop trying to produce and to start learning to abide. Now, this is not permission to do nothing. A branch is not passive. A branch is actively, constantly drawing life up from the vine. But the real question changes. It is no longer, how do I force myself to be more patient? It becomes, am I staying connected to the source? Am I abiding? Am I spending time in the presence of the one whose life I want flowing through me? Because fruit is a byproduct. It is what quietly happens while your attention is fixed on the vine. No branch has ever grown a grape by staring at itself and trying. And here is the most freeing part of all. Fruit grows slowly, in seasons. You will not wake up tomorrow suddenly patient. That is not how orchards work, and it is not how souls work either. There will be good years and lean years, Some fruit will ripen early, and some painfully late. But a tree planted beside living water does not have to hurry. It only has to stay planted. So be patient with the slow, faithful work God is doing in you. You are not a factory that has failed to hit its quota. You are an orchard in early spring, with roots reaching down deeper than you can see. Stay in the vine. Keep your face turned to the light. And in its season, in His season, the fruit will come.